The peace of our Lord Jesus be with you. The story of Jacob culminates in him being the heir to the Abrahamic promise, because as we learned last session, Esau was simply unfit because he was of the flesh, and Jacob is of the spirit. Jacob will have 12 sons, who are the founders of the 12 tribes that will eventually make up the nation of Israel, which will become the light to all the nations. God's chosen people through whom salvation will come. Now, the action of Jacob's story shifts to Joseph, who becomes embroiled in a rivalry with his brothers, which eventually results in his banishment to Egypt. From one angle, the long story of Joseph is necessary to explain how the tribes from Palestine ended in Egypt and into captivity, which sets the stage for Israel's pivotal event, the Exodus experience. The biblical authors are basically setting the stage for the next act. But Joseph is much more than a transition figure. His character, prudent, modest, gifted in dream analysis, well-spoken, and bred to nobility, he will become the perfect wise man for the world. And such a man, the Joseph story will address the need for the rubber hitting the road spirituality. That is, in the face of loss, betrayal, abandonment, and abasement, God seems achingly hidden. Yet he continues to govern, and that hiddenness opens a new disclosure that is stunning in its power and dramatic in its meaning. The lesson for us is no less challenging, because sometimes, doesn't it seem that God just doesn't seem to be here? He's like missing in action, especially during times of chaos, loss, betrayal, rejection, and failure. We go, God, where are you in this? We all go through stretches when nothing about our lives seems to make sense. Yet we trust, believing that God is not missing in action, that he is present despite what conventional wisdom may say, and that he is slowly working out his purposes for us in his sacred time and in his way. The story of Joseph occurs at the end of Genesis, chapters 37 to 50, and it reads like a novella. The plot is simple, and yet it is a literary masterpiece. I encourage you to read it all the way through. It's really worth the time. Joseph receives strange dreams in which he is more important than his brothers, and he has the temerity to tell them that. It's kind of an in-your-face moment, which drives his siblings to envy and resentment. So rather than process their pain, talking to their father Jacob, airing their concerns to Joseph, they conspire among themselves and eventually sell Joseph into slavery and send him off to Egypt. Can you imagine that? His brothers sold him into slavery. Being resourceful, a man of many and useful talents, he finds work in Pharaoh's court, but he's falsely accused of adultery by a spurned court's official wife, and he is sentenced to prison for life. So in prison, he uses his dreams to help royal officials. That gets word to Pharaoh, and he does the same to Pharaoh, which eventually lands him in the role of prime minister, the most influential post next to Pharaoh himself. Then, in time of famine, the family of Jacob migrates to Egypt, where the brothers come into his power. But instead of doing to them what they had done to him, he forgives them and brings his father down to Egypt to live in peace and prosperity. So the drama ends with the family reunited. The book of Exodus takes up the story at this point, stating that Hebrew fortunes changed when a new Egyptian king rose who did not know Joseph, but that's for the next time. The part of the Joseph narrative that I like to reflect with you comes towards the end of Genesis. And it's the conversation of the brothers with Joseph after the death of their father Jacob. It is introduced by lamentation and burial of their father, and it's rich in carefully thought out theology, which reveals so much about how God operates within salvation history. The entire story is shaped for this climatic scene in Genesis 50, 15 to 21. And it's carefully placed at the seam between Genesis and Exodus. The placement is not just a convenient literary bridge, but is to make a theological affirmation as to how God relates to us. The Joseph story deepens the unfolding of the Abrahamic promise by introducing a critical element which is necessary for salvation history. In other words, what is said and done here in this story is for our edification, because God is speaking to us right here and now in the 21st century. God relates to us in the same way as he relates to Joseph and how he related to his son, Jesus. Joseph and his brothers are at a crossroads. If this situation is not resolved according to God's purposes, the whole thread of the Abrahamic promise could be severed. There is a raw exchange between the brothers and Joseph. It's just those two because they don't have the mediating presence of their father Jacob, who has just died. Without that go-between, they have to pick up the pieces of their fractured relationship, and that brings risk. The space between the brothers and Joseph is ill-defined and precarious. What is Joseph going to do? Would he do to them what they did to him? Would he seek revenge? Would he transmit the pain of being betrayed, abandoned, and sold into slavery by his brothers? Would he do that to them in the form of vengeance? Living in a strange land, removed from their cultural moorings in Palestine, totally at the mercy of their betrayed brother, who is the second most powerful man in Egypt, they must have been terrified out of their minds. And no doubt, a lot of their terror must have resulted in their unresolved guilt. They sold their brother into slavery after debating whether they should simply kill him. Once sold and taken into Egypt, they had no idea of what would befall their brother. They took extreme action because they resented Joseph, who was highly favored by their father, Jacob. They dealt with their pain by getting rid of the irritant. Joseph became a scapegoat. There's a spiritual principle here that says if we don't allow God to transform our pain, we'll inevitably transmit it to others. The brothers unleashed their jealousy and resentment by selling him into slavery. Joseph, who now has had power over his brothers, could respond in kind if he wanted vengeance. He could do to them anything he wanted. Slavery, torture, execution. There they stood in a dangerous situation of rawness. Old guarantees wouldn't apply. They forfeited family allegiance when they sold Joseph into slavery. Once those family ties were so brutally broken, Joseph was under no obligation to show brotherly concern. Now, both parties must face the danger. It's like that 60s Sergio Leone spaghetti western, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, in which the conflicted parties are in a circle waiting for the person to make a move before drawing their weapons. Neither Joseph nor his brothers know how this situation is going to play out. The risk of the 11 brothers without the controlling presence of Jacob is not unlike every exile in which old systems of support have been lost. The brothers are totally and absolutely vulnerable. The brothers will be the foundation of the 12 tribes of Israel. If the family is destroyed, torn asunder, scattered to the winds, the Abrahamic promise, which is the starting point of God's rescue operation, would be seriously compromised. The encounter is initiated from the side of the brothers, the admittedly guilty party. They are staring in the face of retribution, payback, because while Jacob was alive, there would be no setting of accounts in a vindictive way. Then we hear, now that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers became fearful and thought, suppose Joseph has been nursing a grudge against us and now plans to pay us back in full for all the wrong we did him. Even though Jacob is dead, the brothers want to cling to the familiar old support, even if it means claiming too much for Jacob. So they approach Joseph and appeal to his family loyalty, even though they, as brothers, cruelly betrayed him. They say, before your father died, he gave us these instructions. You shall say to Joseph, Jacob begs you to forgive the criminal wrongdoing of your brothers, who treated you so cruelly. Please, therefore, forgive the crime that we, the servants of your father's God, committed. As God is slowly gathering his people together, they've come to the crossroads. Will they be a people able to survive as a people if they don't forgive one another? That's the crux of this story. Are they going to be a forgiving people? The betrayal of Joseph's brothers will not be the last sinful actions of believers towards those to whom they owe allegiance and duties. But if Joseph gives into revenge and scatters his brothers into the Egyptian prisons or executes them, the Abrahamic promise, which is the hinge of salvation history, could be aborted before it gets any traction.